You will fail at some point in your life. Accept it. You will lose. You will embarrass yourself. You will suck at something.
Growing up, without a father, not knowing sometimes my mom will come home. My junior year in high school when I lost the state championship, and also losing the finals, it gave me an opportunity to learn who I am as a person and learn how I'm going to go forward.
You will at some point fall. And when you do, I want you to know this, remember this, there is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction.
The number one reason we don't achieve success and we resign ourselves to mediocrity and we get swallowed into failure and discouragement, and it becomes sometimes so deep that we can't see the possibilities that our lives could be, is whether we have grit. Grit is the ability to stay true to your vision and not dilute it when you get laughed at. Grit is the ability to try an innovation, experience failure, and to say, I'm going to continue, and I'm actually going to learn and use that experience to get me closer on my path to the mountaintop.
You have to make a decision to win or lose. And it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter when you get it, the decision is yours.
And I just been failing my whole life, man. My old dude didn't come in my life until I was about 30, dropped out of high school, took 12 years to get a 4-year degree. Like, I've been failing my whole life, but
You said 12 years?
12 years to get a 4-year degree. Okay. I mastered failing. And I just fell forward, I learned from my mistakes, and I turned my mistakes into a book. I turned my mistakes into a message. I turned it into a YouTube.
Every failed experiment is one step closer to success. If you don't fail, you're not even trying. To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did.
Failure is not an option. When you go into it, I want you to go into everything you do, listen to me, as if failure is not an option. All right? It's not a but. It's not a label. It does not exist. All right? So I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go in with that attitude that failure is not an option. Look, if you've been doing 10 things and it ain't working, do 11. But for real, you like, what's going to happen if you quit? So whatever you do, man, don't give up.
Every time you get knocked down, it's an opportunity for you to develop more confidence, develop more experience, develop more inner power.
It's possible. Yes, your dream is possible. Say that to yourself every day. Feed your mind with words that you write in, words that you hear, and words that you speak to yourself. Feed your faith, and your doubts will starve. Say to yourself, it's possible. It's possible.
This is your mission. Never be discouraged. Never hold back. Give everything you've got. And when you fall throughout life, remember this. Fall forward.
Every day when you wake up, you got two options. You can look at the clock and hit the snooze. You can look at that snooze button, boom. You can hit the snooze button and go back to bed. That's right, and do what? And dream. That's right, you can go back to sleep and dream.
What's going on, guys? Welcome in. NFL First Look, your first look each week at all the games on the docket. Week 6 here. Can't believe it's week 6 already, but all presented to you by rosters.com. If you haven't checked it out, last week to get in the Super Bowl promotion, somebody's going to win 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. All you got to do is basically play on the site in the $25 tournament. You place in that, you get a spot in the finals. I think if you play $100 in a day, you get a spot. So easy. Get it done. Last chance for that. But let me bring in my partner in crime here. Just one of us so far. We're going to have maybe a surprise visit by Chop here later on. But Brett Hartfield, you know him as Killer B. Brett, how we doing, bud?
Good. We were just talking before the show just how a little bit tougher with lineup construction this week. It seems like what we've been doing is paying down at running back, getting the cheaper value, and then spending up at wide receiver. Well, seems it's going to be kind of just turned around the exact opposite this week. We'll be potentially paying up at running back and then trying to find value wide receivers for lineup construction. So,
yeah, definitely an interesting week. So injuries are here, bye weeks are here, and this is the fun of the season. We got some statistics to back up what we're looking at. So what we do here, we go game by game. We're hoping, in air quotes, to save some time at the end for questions. So if you guys got anything, throw it in the chat as we go along. I'll try to incorporate it into the talk during that game, but hopefully we can save at least 5-10 minutes and get some questions in for the first time. So let's get started. Thursday Night Football. We always talk about, do we play it? Do we fade it? How do we attack this one? Denver going to San Diego. Denver -3, 45.5 point total. What's the outlook on this one, Brett?
Yeah, I'll definitely be staying away from all San Diego players here. I guess when looking at the Denver side of things, there's not enough that intrigues me either. And it's mainly just because of C.J. Anderson and Devontae Booker. You know, it looks like this game's going to be set up really well for the Denver rush game. The only issue is C.J. Anderson's been losing snaps each and every week to Devontae Booker. So not only snaps, but then also, touches and targets. So, and then between Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, I want Emmanuel Sanders in my cash games. Demaryius Thomas been a little bit more efficient with his targets and actually getting more touchdowns there. So I could potentially see, it's okay to throw one of those guys maybe in a GPP, but that's probably that's like the only part of this game that I'd really want is the Denver wide receivers. So
not touching anything on the San Diego side. They've struggled with pass catching running backs, and we know Melvin Gordon filling that role. Any interest you at all? Are you worried about the ownership being higher than it should? We see that every Thursday night. Guys are way higher owned just because they're on TV. So any Gordon for you at all?
No, I'm not going to try and figure out who's going to go off in this offense, especially against a tough defense in Denver. So this is just a total fade spot for me. You're never going to see me take too many, probably anybody against Denver. We did see Atlanta, have success on the actually just with the running backs, and it was actually mainly through the air. So Tevin Coleman had a huge game against Denver last week. But, yeah, I don't plan on doing that, moving forward, taking running backs here. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of bailed on Gordon last week. He just has not been efficient. The touchdowns can't continue to be there. C.J. Anderson killed a lot of my lineups last week. So a little sour on that, but great point. Booker's starting to eat into the workload. You look at the stats, and each and every week the snap counts are up, the touches are up for Booker, and he's looked good. So why run one guy into the ground when you can use them both? I agree with Emmanuel Sanders. He's definitely been the guy. Looks like Semien may be back in this game. He's certainly favored Sanders, so I like that call. But to me, you load up in cash games. You hope to run in the stacks. That's how I approach it every week. Should be a fun game to watch, but fantasy-wise, I'm mostly staying away. All right, let's move on. Cincinnati going to New England. Cincinnati didn't look very good last week in Dallas. What's going to happen here in New England? Is another Tom Brady week? Do we see more James White? Gronk, does he continue to impress? And, of course, Martellus Bennett. Hope you had some exposure to him last week with his 3 touchdowns. So how are we attacking New England? Anything on Cincinnati? Playing some A.J. Green garbage time? What's the plan here?
Yeah, I think with this game, I'm just really looking at the New England tight ends here. Both Gronk and Martellus. I think I'll have exposure to both in GPPs and in cash. With Martellus and Chris Hogan coming to the Patriots this year, it's kind of made the targets for maybe be Edelman to go down. Like, it's tough to project what he's going to do week in, week out. He was a cash game staple for me last year, but you knew where the ball was going to go in this offense last year. I feel like with Hogan, and then you also have James White, they're doing a spread out offense now that Tom Brady's back. It's just it's going to be tough to really isolate who's going to be the guy from week to week. We saw that LeGarrette Blount is now getting less snaps. So James White snap count going up. But LeGarrette's still getting his carries here. And, I'd still expect this should be a Blount game to a certain degree. When he's in, he should be getting the rock carry-wise. And then the only person I really kind of want to look at on the Cincinnati side of the ball is Brandon LaFell. So LaFell got 2 touchdowns, basically in garbage time last week. But 2 years ago, he caught 74 balls for New England. This is a spot where, I would assume New England's going to try and take out A.J. Green. So LaFell, for basically min value across the industry, is a good punt for a wide receiver.
Yeah, we saw him show up last week, and A.J. Green dealing with a little bit of injury, so something to keep an eye on there as well. As far as the running back goes, looks like Gio Bernard got most of the work. Jeremy Hill was back at practice today, so we'll see what that kind of split looks like. But I don't mind Gio in a tournament. He's going to catch some passes if they're going to be down, but cash games can't touch anything on Cincinnati. And I agree with you on New England. Just so many targets. Edelman, it's hard to trust that he's going to get those 10, 12 targets every week that we saw last week. But should be another big game by Tom Brady, I would imagine. So I got to think New England rolls in this one. All right, let's go to one that could be funnier. Pittsburgh at Miami. Pittsburgh -7.5, 47-point total here. We were talking Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell before the show. So give the listeners, the viewers, your thoughts on cash games, tournaments, what you're doing Pittsburgh here on the road. Ben splits, home, road, not good. The home splits are good. The road splits have not been good. So what are you doing here?
Yeah, I mean, with this offense, I'm going to trust the run game probably every single game, whether it's on the road or at home. With Roethlisberger on the road, I'm not going to trust the passing game as much. So when just analyzing who I'd rather have in my lineups, Le'Veon Bell versus Antonio Brown, I will side with Le'Veon Bell here. He hasn't got to pay dirt yet. He hasn't scored a touchdown, but I think it's coming in a, potentially 2-touchdown game here. Just to note that Le'Veon Bell has been running 35 pass routes per game so far in the first 2 games. Both games over 150 yards. Last week it was up against a Jets offense where I did favor Antonio Brown over Le'Veon, but great to see how much Le'Veon Bell was used in the pass game. The Jets did shut him down to only 60-some yards of rushing offense, but he still got his through the air. So that was great to see. And then on the Miami side, Jarvis Landry is going to be one of my favorite cash game plays here. I expect a bounce-back game. Ryan Tannehill, really bad game last week, but back at home, Pittsburgh defense that, gives up a lot of passing through the air. I expect Jarvis Landry to have at least 12 targets this game. So nice spot for him.
And even in tournaments, I think people are going to look at the 3 targets last week and they're going to bail on them. So Pittsburgh's pass defense, not as good as people like to think it is. So Miami, I think, could be a nice spot to get some low-owned guys. One quick note, and remember, it's Wednesday, but looks like there could be some weather issues there. Looks like mostly a lot of rain, which I don't think either of us really worry about rain. If there's high winds, we saw that really affect that game in Baltimore. So just something to put in the back of your head here. Again, not going to try to project the weather 4 days out, but it does show on our lineups page here, so something to keep in the back of your head. Anything else in this game you want to hit on? Are you ready to move on?
Yeah, just another thing to note, Arian Foster looks like he's going to be back running the ball for Miami here. But, yeah, I don't see myself attacking Pittsburgh on the ground. Plus, don't know if he's going to have his full share of carries. Jay Ajayi is kind of penciled in a spot, I think, in this offense moving forward. And also Sammy Coates. I know, obviously, Sammy Coates had a big game last week. He also had somewhat of a bad real game, had 4 drop passes, could have had 2 more touchdowns, but great fantasy day. His speed is elite, kind of, stepped into that Martavis Bryant role, getting a lot of one-on-one, and he's just beating the corners by his speed alone. But he did show up at practice with in a cast. So he's already got bad hands. I don't know if that cast is going to help him anymore or what, but I'd probably stay away from Sammy Coates this week.
Man, is he frustrating to own. Like, you love the highs, you love the long touchdowns, but he's this year's Ted Ginn. I mean, you're going to get those deep balls, and he's going to catch half of them. You just hope he, catches the ones in the end zone. So you're right. Probably could have 3-4 touchdowns in that game. Still put a big day together. I expect a lot of people to go back to that well against Miami. So interesting if you want to play or fade that one. Still kind of thinking that one out. All right, let's move on. Philly at Washington, NFC East battle. Philly minus 2.5, 44.5 point total here. So Cousins, another guy. You get him at home, plays a little bit better, but Jordan Reed in the concussion protocol as of today. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. But division opponents, does this affect the way you kind of look at this game, knowing these teams know each other so well?
Yeah, usually the second time around, I respect a little bit more when it's in divisional games. But just to note, like, Philly's really started out with a super fancy-friendly schedule. They've had it home against Cleveland, at Chicago, home against Pittsburgh, at Detroit, and now at Washington. But, with all those great matchups, they don't really have a true consistent fantasy performer here. And like you said, Jordan Reed sat out today with a concussion protocol. So, I could see GPP plays with Deshaun Jackson, D-Jax going up against his old team here. In 3 games, 2 of those were monsters. So if you are a narrative guy and you want to buy into somebody, he should have a few more targets if Jordan Reed's out. So there's always that. But I think Philly has got a good situation here against Washington. You beat Washington on the ground. Mark Trestman didn't learn that last week. He lost his job. So I think Ryan Matthews is in a really good situation. You're going to get him very low owned. And then Zach Ertz and Jordan Matthews. I love Ertz in real life. I just don't know if this is the spot for him. And then Jordan Matthews, he's really frustrating, very high low. Last 2 weeks, only 7 targets. But it was nice to see also that Ertz, did play on 83% of snaps. But can I go there? Probably not, only in tournaments for Matthews and Ertz, and it would be kind of a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, they just spread the ball out so much. You don't know who's going to get the target. So I think Ertz, a lot of people are going to bail. He was the chalk last week. They're going to jump off there. So and Matthews on the ground, you mentioned it. Washington really struggling. We saw Terrence West have a nice game against them. Ryan Matthews, that's an interesting call. We were expecting to see some Wendell Smallwood last week. Didn't even get on the field. So maybe Matthews is the bell cow with Sproles working in. So I agree. That's going to be a very, very low-owned option. And I love the D-Jax call. I love me some narrative street. Always good for a couple big games a year. So anything else in this one you want to hit on we didn't touch on, or are we ready to move on?
We're ready to go.
All right, we're rolling. We're going to have some time for some questions this week. I can feel it. So Baltimore at Giants. Giants -3. Pretty low total here, 43.5. 2 defenses I think are a lot better than people expected them to be coming into the season. So can the Giants bounce back? Did not look great in that game against our Packers last week. And Baltimore's kind of hit the skids as well after a hot start. So which team bounces back? Which team are you attacking?
Yeah, I do like the Giants here. Again, like I said, Baltimore with Mark Trestman losing his job as the offensive coordinator. Don't know what that's going to mean to this offense. Joe Flacco's been used to throwing 40-some times a game. Is that going to change now? This should be interesting moving forward, so just make a note of that for sure. But outside of the one spot that I want to attack here on the Baltimore side is probably Dennis Pitta. He's got. I mean, old man Steve Smith's hurt, so I think old man Dennis Pitta is getting the spot to look at. Perfect in between the 20s, even though Crockett Gilmore is getting more of the targets in the red zone. But yeah, I still think Pitta has a high floor. You can definitely use him in cash games here. Should see somewhere around 10 targets. And then the Giants are going to be probably just a GPP play for me. Looks like Larry Donnell will be coming back potentially here, so just take note of that. And then, I mean, we still haven't seen the big game out of Odell Beckham, but he gets to finally come home after going to Minnesota and Green Bay. So if this should be a spot where you're going to get him very low owned, and I can see a monster game here out of Odell.
Yeah, everybody was on him last week, let him down, so you know how that works. It's the old recency bias. So And Will Tye, a lot of Will Tye, an inch from a 50-yard touchdown. Almost had that baby. But with Donnell back, like you said, that's going to, they're going to split time. They're going to eat into each other's productions. I have my concerns with Eli Manning moving forward. Just has not looked very sharp or effective at all this season. So maybe a little home cooking will help here. But, again, small total. Both teams' totals very low at 23 and 20. So not much here that I'm looking at. But I do like the Beckham call in tournaments. All right, let's go to one I think is going to be a lot of fun. Jacksonville and Chicago, Bears -2.5. Now, this one, I included Brian Hoyer in my six-pack this week. A lot of comments that a lot of people are fading Brian Hoyer and the Bears offense, saying Jacksonville's defense is better than people give it credit for. I think there's a happy medium there. I don't think they're as improved as people like to think. I don't think they're as bad as people like to think either. What's your thoughts here? Do we continue to roll to Brian Hoyer? I think he's underpriced. A lot of good weapons. We saw Cam Meredith show up last week. Does that continue? Jordan Howard, do we continue to ride that train? And then on the other side, Bortles, Robinson, and the run game. So a lot to unpack in this one. Floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, so you're finally seeing the Bears pricing get up there. Hoyer's price is now finally getting up to where he should be around. You got Jordan Howard's price keeps on moving up, now where he's now priced around the 6th or 7th running back on most sites. So the price is finally catching up to these guys. I agree more with the Jacksonville is a good defensive side, I think. They faced 4 pretty decent running back or quarterbacks in Rodgers, Luck, Rivers, and Flacco, and they haven't given up more than 234 yards through the air. But we have seen Hoyer come on 3 games in a row of 300-plus yards and 2 touchdowns in every single game. So something's got to give. But I'd be more leaning towards Jordan Howard here if you want to invest into the Chicago Bears offense. Also, out of all the breakout performers in Week 5, love Cameron Meredith. I feel like this guy is a legitimate talent, but it's more about the play calling, more about the targets to that wide receiver. He stepped right into the role and just got peppered with targets. So gotta love that. And then on the Jacksonville side, it's going to be mainly just tournaments, and I'd like to have tournament exposure to Allen Robinson. I know I think he's the second highest priced wide receiver on FanDuel, so it'd be tough to get him in there. But in other spots where he's priced down, I like attacking this Bears defense. It's been kind of like one of those defenses that you can, they have been giving up deep balls. T.Y. Hilton scorched them last week. So,
yeah, coming into last week, they were good at containing the big plays, and I had a feeling Hilton was going to be that guy that would take the top off that defense, and that's what we saw. I think Allen Robinson, just a bigger, stronger version that can get beyond the defense as well. So I like that play. So we'll see about this Brian Hoyer thing. I think he continues his run here, but time will tell. Anything else? Any interest in Yeldon, Ivory? You touching that situation? And then what about any Allen Hurns? Anything else on the Jacksonville side?
Yeah, I still think this is TJ Yeldon's job. But yeah, I don't like anything. I mean, obviously they should be behind a little bit in this game, but yeah, if you want to invest in anybody, but I don't like it. TJ Yeldon's your guy if you want to go there. But no, I'm going to probably stay away from Zach Miller also in this game. I don't know if I want to. There's a lot of good tight end options this week, and so kind of narrowed down the field, and Zach Miller's not making the cut for me either.
And so many targets there. I don't want to say great weapons for the Bears, but Alshon's still out there. Royal's getting healthy. We saw Meredith break out. Miller, Howard's involved in the passing game, so it's tough to pull the trigger on these guys in cash games. But tournaments, I agree. I think Meredith's going to be my guy as well. All right, let's get to.
And as every week goes on, Elshon's just going to get 1 week healthier, going to get probably more involved in that offense. So I'm just waiting for that big marquee game out of him. We haven't seen it yet. So.
And no one will be on him. This week could be 2-3% owned. Meredith's going to be the guy that people go to. So I agree. It's coming sooner or later. He's getting healthier. They got to get this guy the ball. He's their best player. So, all right, let's move on. This one should be fun. Carolina at New Orleans. Go ahead. I mean, who's not in play in this game?
Yeah, so this game stands alone by itself. It's 5.5 points more than the second largest game. So 53 points of the over under. So you're going to want to have some exposure of this game, as Vegas has it deemed as the highest game by quite a bit. So, on New Orleans side of the ball, love Drew Brees at home. Don't really have to keep on hitting how great he is. But safest play of any quarterback, 7 straight games at home of 3 touchdowns, which is ridiculous. And then he's averaged over 300-yard games, over 300-plus yards in the last 2 years at home. So one thing to know, Mark Ingram seems really cheap across the industry, and he's kind of stepped into a new role here, or actually a role that he kind of had last year that he wasn't showing over the first few weeks. So he's gotten 13 targets, caught 10 balls, and we expect a lot of scoring in this game. So I do like Ingram as a cheap option if you want to pivot away from one of the more elite running backs. So that's always an option for you. And then another thing, Brandon Cooks at home has scored touchdowns in 7 of 8 straight games. So it seems like at home, New Orleans is going to score a lot of points. Drew Brees is going to be throwing a lot of touchdowns. It's just you don't know who's going to catch them. But I feel like Cooks is the guy that you can kind of narrow in on. And then Michael Thomas, another great play. He's been in there week in, week out. Whether Willie Snead was playing or Willie Snead was out, he's been getting targets. So, and then over on the Carolina side, kind of question marks here. Cam Newton out with a concussion. What's he going to be like personally? And then how is Carolina going to call the game? Is he still going to get the same amount of carries near the goal line? Because there's nobody that has a higher ceiling than Cam Newton. But to reach that ceiling, he needs to run the ball. And if they're not going to, allow him to run, if they're just not going to call the same run plays that they used to with Cam to limit his hits, then he doesn't have the same he doesn't have the same projection. He's going to be a different type of player. So to me, it's kind of a question mark. And so I'm going to try and reserve Cam for GPPs only. And then that means Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. You can pair up Cam. You don't have to pair him, but I expect actually a big bounce back game out of Kelvin Benjamin. Kind of wasn't the same guy with Derek Anderson under center. And then Greg Olsen, obviously monster game last week, but I feel like where he's priced right now as more of the top end tight end, I'm more looking to get exposure to Gronk.
Yeah, we're going to get to murderer's row of running backs on the high end, so that's really going to make it hard to get a guy like Olsen in the lineup. But do a little rapid fire here. We talked about this game pre-show, but for the listeners. So Mark Ingram, is he playable in cash for you? We talked about it. I love him this week. I'm with you. He's another guy included in my video. Love the price. Can you pull the trigger in cash games?
Easier to pull him in cash if you have a flex spot. Tougher if it's a two running back place like FanDuel. It's almost just an opportunity cost of not having one of the other elite running backs in a prime position. But I will say he's on the bubble, looking on the outside of the bubble, looking in. So right now, just missing my cash games.
What do you expect his ownership in the big tournaments to be? I think everybody knows Drew Brees at home. You pull the trigger there. I think they're going to be more on the passing game. Maybe I'm wrong. Does Ingram go overlooked here, or is everybody going to be on that wagon?
Yeah, I think you're going to get him for very low ownership here. I think most people, when they see New Orleans at home, they invest in the passing game. So yeah, I agree. That's one way to get leverage in this game. And I don't like Carolina's running side of the ball. So if New Orleans goes up, and he's also game flow independent now that he's catching the ball. So I feel like it doesn't matter whether New Orleans is winning or losing. He's still going to be a pretty big part of this, of their game plan. So.
And Drew Brees, do you, I know you like Brandon Cooks. Do you have to stack him with somebody? Is that the guy you would do? Or are you okay with rolling with naked Drew Brees?
Yeah, I almost never go naked Drew Brees just because a lot of times when I go naked, it's because I feel like the quarterback has a good running floor, could run, possibly have 2 touchdowns, a la Russell Wilson or Cam Newton. Here, I feel like all of his fantasy points is going to come through the air, and there's going to be a monster guy in there. Now, can you pick the guy? To me, it's most likely going to be Brandon Cooks. I think I'm going to steer away from Colby Fleener, but he is another GPP play. I think the other guys are just too risky. But I do like Michael Thomas. I mean, Thomas has been there week in, week out.
Does John Kuhn ever again in his life score 3 touchdowns?
Well, I believe his stat line was 2 carries and then 2 catches, and then he got 3 touchdowns. So no, he's a blocker, and man, if he snipes more 1-yard touchdowns, I'm gonna be, yeah. If I have Ingram, especially a decent exposure, and I get John Kuhn again, that would be, I'll be yelling, that's for sure.
I had a ton of Ingram that week in San Diego. So we both love John Kuhn as Packer fans, but not when he's stealing our money by touchdown. So this game should be awesome. So obviously make sure you have some exposure. Anything else? One quick note, Jonathan Stewart expected to be back, so that throws a wrench into Cameron Artis' pain. Anything else here we want to hit on or we missed? Are we ready to roll on?
I'm good to go. I guess Ted Ginn would be a good GPP play. We just talked about him probably 20 minutes ago, saying how frustrated you are with his drops, but you can beat the Saints, with passing. So, yeah, I mean, I'm good with a Ted Ginn GPP dart too.
I mean, they gave up, 45 passing touchdowns last season, and so we got to get close to that number. That defense isn't that much better. So, all right, let's move on. More of a defensive struggle here, looks like. Rams at Lions. Lions home favorites -3. Another smallish total here of just 44. So any love here in this game? Because I'm not seeing it. Theo Riddick was great. Now you bring in Justin Forsett. So what do you expect his role to be? Does that affect Theo Riddick, or does that affect Washington and the center end of things? And then the Rams. What are they going to do here in this game? Is this a Todd Gurley game? You staying away? What are you seeing out of this one?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if Justin Forsett's even active the very first game here. So I don't know exactly what his role will be, but it should take away some of the carries away from Theo Riddick if he is active. So just good thing to note there. Rams on the defensive side of the ball are pretty injured. Trumaine Johnson's got a high ankle sprain. So that's he's a cornerback for the Rams, by the way. And that should help Marvin Jones, free up Marvin Jones a little bit more here. So I do like a bounce back spot here for Marvin Jones, getting some more targets. I'm done with Golden Tate. I don't think he's viable in any format right now. Offensive coordinator came out and said that they were going to involve him a ton, and he ended up getting 5 targets. I think he added like 40-some yards. So, yeah. No go on Golden Tate. And then on the Rams side, I think there's plenty of good GPP plays here. Todd Gurley, only issue here looks like Betty Cunningham is going to be playing. So I think Cunningham takes his targets away, which he's been receiving, which really hurts his value. Crazy that you're going to bring up Benny Cunningham, hurting Gurley's value, but it really does. So it kind of leaves Gurley just in the bucket of GPP right now. I will probably stay away from him in cash just because of that. And then Tavon Austin definitely can beat this Detroit defense through the air. Austin's their big play guy. It's also tough to know what this offense looks like from week in, week out. Any guy could have a touchdown or 2 touchdowns. Kenny Britt, Brian Quick. But yeah, Tavon Austin, like him a little bit more just because he gets more of the carries too. He'll touch the ball in the backfield 2 or 3 times, get some kickoff, punt return action also. So yeah, I like Tavon Austin in GPPs.
All right, we got 7 games. We got 20 minutes. So let's move on to the next game. 49ers at Bills. Bills -7.5, 44-point total here. To me, this one's easy. Shady McCoy looks like a man amongst boys out there. Gets the Chip Kelly bump here with even more plays. And also like Tyrod Taylor, Colin Kaepernick stepping in for the 49ers. So quickly, you with me on Shady and anything else that you're looking at out of this one?
Yeah, 3 things I want to mention here. LaShawn McCoy, great spot at home. You got San Fran going from West Coast to East Coast, which love targeting when one team has to go to the opposite coast here. Touchdown favorite. Also kind of a little narrative street going up against his old coach here. So that's, if you love your narratives, there you go. And then Robert Woods, San Fran is the worst against wide receiver ones. He's kind of taken over the role. He's had 25% market share, more than 25% market share in each week of the last 3 weeks. So like him as kind of a punt wide receiver, even in cash games, I would consider Robert Woods. And then Buffalo defense is my top defense. They've been phenomenal. They shut out New England. They've looked good like every single week for the last 3 weeks here. I think they've averaged more than 2 turnovers a game, 3.5 sacks, and 3 out of the 5 games have had touchdowns. So you gotta love that in a situation where Colin Kaepernick's taking over.
I'm getting a lot of Kaepernick questions. I just keep saying no.
Right.
Are you with me? Is there any interest if, say, you're running 100? How many lineups does it take for you to want to put Colin Kaepernick in one lineup?
I mean, one site in particular that I might have him in is Fantasy Aces. He's 4,500 on Fantasy Aces. I'm okay with that. He does bring a floor with his running capabilities. But I mean, what's his ceiling like? He hasn't played for a while. I've heard reports that he's 20 pounds underweight, so I don't know what type of Colin Kaepernick we're getting here. And also,
that's a tough place to play, Buffalo.
Right, and the value of Jeremy Curley, like if you've really liked what Curley's done, you should have the last few weeks. But I think his value is now shot with Colin Kaepernick taking over.
Agreed. No Kaepernick for this guy. All right, let's move on. Cleveland at Tennessee, 44-point total. Tennessee, a big home favorite here. I think that tends us to roster DeMarco Murray, similar to LaShawn McCoy in my eyes. Mariota looked great. Can he keep it going here? You touching anything on the Cleveland side of things? Very small team total here of just 18 this week.
Yeah, this is a similar situation to the Buffalo-San Fran game. So DeMarco Murray, great spot. Lion's share of touches in this offense. I can't touch any wide receiver on Tennessee here, but Delanie Walker, since he's been back the last 2 weeks, has taken over all the targets again. So yeah, I definitely like Delanie in both formats, in cash and GPP. DeMarco Murray, I don't know if I can pay his price tag. I've been leaning to going towards Le'Veon Bell or LaShawn McCoy, but I can't fault you for going DeMarco Murray. There's just so many great running backs in elite spots this week. It's just going to be how the pricing for whatever site you're playing, and what you're trying to do with your lineup. So just know that though, DeMarco Murray, I feel like is going to be low owned. So I mean, he's a great pivot guy.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to go up to Le'Veon, David Johnson, or down to McCoy in that area. So Murray's been phenomenal this season. Wish I had like 9 flex spots, and you just put all these running backs in one lineup. So I don't think there's anything else here to see. Let's move on. Kansas City at Oakland. Looks like a push here from what Vegas is saying, 47-point total. What side do you have more exposure to? You like the Raiders at home, Kansas City coming in, and Jamal Charles, getting a ton of questions about him. So any insight into that backfield real quick? Charles, how does that split play out?
Yeah, I guess I would project Jamal Charles to get 10 to 12 touches. Out of Jamal Charles' mouth, he says he's ready. He took the training wheels off this week. So he says all systems go. We'll see what his body says. We'll see what the coaches say. But I would expect almost a 50-50 timeshare. Spencer Ware is still a really good running back. And at this point in time, very similar to the Minnesota situation. At this particular time, Spencer Ware might be the better running back. So I do like Kansas City, but I'm going to get my exposure to Kansas City through the pass game. Alex Smith is one of my favorite value quarterbacks on the week, going up against an Oakland Raiders team that's 29th in DVOA versus the pass. So, and Alex Smith quietly has the second most pass attempts in the league. So love pairing him up with Jeremy Maclin in tournaments. Even love Jeremy Maclin in cash games. He should be peppered all day long in the pass game. Travis Kelce, I can't fault you for going Kelce, but there's just guys in and around his price that I like a little bit more this week. The Raiders used to be a team in the first half of last year to target with the tight ends, but it seems like this year they've been pretty stout versus the tight ends. So. And then on the Oakland side of the ball, looks like Amari Cooper should be running a few more routes away from Marcus Peters. So Michael Crabtree should be more on the Marcus Peters side of the ball. So if you're looking at which wide receiver to go to, I would lean towards Cooper.
All right, let's move on. Atlanta at Seattle. Seattle minus 6.5, 45.5 point total here. Atlanta, I think, shocked me. going into Denver and winning. Can this role continue? How do they attack Seattle? We saw them attack with the running backs against Denver. It was very effective. Now you got to go to Seattle. So I don't know who's scheduling this stuff for Atlanta, but, man, rough draw here. And on the Seattle side, I love me some Russell Wilson. I think you got to put Christian Michael in this group of high-end running backs. Jimmy Graham looks like vintage Jimmy Graham. Doug Baldwin's better at home. So I'm loving the Seattle side of things. Are you with me there? And what are we doing with Atlanta?
Yeah, I can't roster any Atlanta. This will be the second time they're going through the gauntlet, going through Denver, now Seattle. Just brutal. But, Tevin Coleman looked great. Devontae Freeman looked good. Offense looked phenomenal. They were moving the ball. They weren't making too many big plays other than Tevin Coleman finding some room in the pass game. But, I just won't roster these guys. It's just not a situation. Seattle coming off a bye week. You will also see me avoid teams coming off bye weeks defensively, especially on the road. So everybody on Seattle is in play. Russell Wilson, Christine Michael, Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham's coming off of back-to-back 100-yard games. I like GPPing him up. Russell Wilson, I don't know if I would go with both Baldwin and Jimmy Graham in GPPs, but I would at least pick one. He's throwing the ball enough. You hope he gets one on the ground also. And he doesn't need a monster game through the air to have a huge game total. I mean, he can always put up 50, 60 yards on the ground. He should be a lot healthier now having a week off for his ankles. So, Christine Michael, I feel like is in another great spot, a lot cheaper than some of the other elite running backs. So, but in another great situation where they're going to be favored by a touchdown here. Atlanta's been giving it up through the air, on the ground, to tight ends, to wide receivers, everywhere. So, love all of Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, big team total here, 26, and great point. Wilson coming off that bye week, exactly what I was thinking. Gives them an extra week to heal up. This offense should be ready to roll here. And I'm not touching Atlanta. They've been great. They've been impressive, but this is another tough spot. I don't know if they can keep pulling rabbits out of the hat. I don't know if they're as good as they are showing. Maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is a very difficult place to play. All right, let's move on. Talk about our Packers here. -4-point favorites at home against Dallas. 47.5-point total in this one. I'm excited to see this game, not just as a Packer fan, but fantasy-wise. Great test for a guy like Dak Prescott. Ezekiel Elliott, can he continue to run the ball effectively against basically the number one run D in the NFL right now? And what do we see out of Green Bay in this one? Rodgers, as a whole, been disappointing. If Lacey's out, any interest in James Stark? So a lot in this one. So take it over.
Yeah, if Lacey is out, I think James Starks is very viable at almost min value across the industry. But everything else in this game is just tournament only. Like you said, Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas has been running their offense through this guy. Do I think the Packers are the best run-stopping team in the league? No, but they've gone up against some pretty legit running backs, and they've stuffed them. I feel like the way you can beat the Packers, obviously, is still through the air. So if Bryce Butler is still there and still starting, I don't mind having a little bit of exposure there. Cole Beasley's still really cheap. I feel like he's cash game. He's an option in cash games, but just not a high ceiling there. Jordy Nelson will always be in play. Tournaments at home. Rodgers, you can pair him up with Rodgers at home. He just looked really off last game, and I think it was like 4 or 5 series in a row of 3-and-outs, and you just don't see that at home with the Packers. So one of the most frustrating games to watch as a fan, especially when I had a lot of exposure to Rodgers and Jordy in that game.
Yeah, and it's like, what universe am I living in when Devontae Adams is catching everything and Jordy Nelson is dropping everything? So very frustrated to see. Great point in the chat. James Stark's also dealing with some injuries. Any idea who's behind them? Because I know what was the guy in the preseason, get his name, Crockett, is on IR. Who's behind him if just in case neither of these guys can go?
Yeah, I haven't even looked that up. I'm looking at a depth chart right now, and it has Eddie Lacy and James Stark. So I'm just assuming that's the only healthy bodies that we've had out there. So I don't know who would be next up, but Eddie Lacy was in practice doing a little bit of walkthrough. So I have a feeling that Eddie Lacy is going to be okay.
So just a situation to keep an eye on, no doubt about it. Anything else here? We ready to move on?
We're good to go.
All right, 2 games left. Sunday Night Football, Colts and Texans. Houston -3 at home, 46-point total in this one. Andrew Luck hitting the road. Another guy, much better at home. You go anywhere near that Colts offense. And then on the Houston side of things, can they keep it going at home? Had a rough game in Minnesota, but at home, Will Fuller's look great. Hopkins, I love Lamar Miller this week as a guy people will overlook. What are your thoughts on Miller, on Houston, and any Colts interest?
Yeah, the first guy I want to touch up on is Lamar Miller. Love him in this spot. Like you said, a lot of people are going to be looking at, all the box score watchers are going to be off of Lamar Miller. But he's got 47% of the team's touches, which is second most in the NFL for running backs. And then Indy's 31st DVOA versus the run. So he's cash and GPP playable. Love Lamar Miller. I've been putting him in like a lot of flex spots where they're the sites that have the flex option. And then with the pass game, I do feel like this is also a GPP play where you can roll with Osweiler, Hopkins, and Fuller. It should be interesting to see how they get matched up with Indy defensive backfield here. I feel like if Vontae Davis shadows DeAndre Hopkins, then I love Will Fuller. I would even pair him up with defense here. Hopefully you get the double dip action where he takes one to the house on kickoff or punt. So, but then on the Indy side of things, there's not a lot to like here for me. T.Y. Hilton is still the last man standing with double-digit targets each week. So I feel like that floor is still there. And they're going to have to pass here. They should be coming from behind. So, I would get some exposure to T.Y., but that's about it.
I like the Houston defense. We saw Indy go to Denver, and they were a low defense. You're always going to get turnovers with Andrew Luck. The offensive line is basically Swiss cheese. So Houston defense, even without J.J. Watt, I like the pairing, like you said, with Fuller, or even pairing him up with Lamar Miller, who, again, I think is going to be very low owned this week. People are going to be afraid to roster him. The workload's been there. If the dude's got a couple more touchdowns, we're talking about him in the same breath as McCoy, Murray, some of these other guys. So I think he gets on the right side of touchdown variance this week. Very much one of my favorite plays on the week. All right, we got 6 minutes. So if you guys got quick questions, any questions, start firing them up. We'll hit this last game. Hopefully we'll have a couple minutes for those questions. So get them ready. But let's go to Monday Night Football. Jets at Cardinals. Carson Palmer is back. David Johnson looked like Walter Payton last week. Does he keep it going here against a pretty good Jets run D, or is it all about the passing game? We know the Jets have been lit up each and every week in that secondary. So I like Carson Palmer as a very low-owned option if you're playing him on a slate. Are you with me? Are you going David Johnson? What about the Jets? I really like Brandon Marshall again this week, but a tougher matchup here with Patrick Peterson. So break it down.
Yeah, so love Arizona here, and I'll probably be attacking obviously the Jets through the air game. So Palmer, pretty cheap across the industry. Love him. Looks like Michael Floyd is now been the number 4 wide receiver. The amount of routes run has just gone down each week the last 2 weeks. So John Brown's my guy though. Like I love me some John Brown here. Still really cheap in comparison to Larry Fitzgerald. And I feel like this is about the time of the year where, Fitzy starts getting a little nicked up and whatnot. If I need to buy a wide receiver here, I'm all in on Floyd. And then talking about David Johnson, I feel like they're going to have to utilize him like Le'Veon Bell was utilized against the Jets last week. And, if there's a guy that can do the Le'Veon Bell role, it's David Johnson. He was an ex-wide receiver in college. So I'd like to see him get at least 9-10 targets here because I feel like he's going to have troubles getting 60 yards on the ground. So, and then on the Jets side of the ball, Eric Decker was put on IR today. So kind of leaves a lot of targets open for Marshall and then Quincy Enunwa. The matchup alone is going to be tough, but I feel like Marshall is still going to be peppered by Ryan Fitzpatrick. And we know how Fitzy likes to throw those interceptions. So get some Arizona defense in here. Arizona defense is in a prime spot on Monday night. They should be good for a couple turnovers here and, good chance for a touchdown. So
I still like Brandon Marshall. I think the floor is 10 targets, so they're going to be playing from behind. I like that play. I'm with you on the Cardinals, guys. You said you're all in on Floyd. Did you mean John Brown?
Oh, yeah, I meant John Brown.
Okay,
Yeah.
Come
Did
back
I say
and
Michael
say,
Floyd?
Killer B told me to go all in on Michael Floyd.
Nope. Meant John Brown and not Jaron Brown.
All right, that's what I figured. Just making sure. All right, we got a couple minutes, so I'm going to hammer these questions to you. Will the loss of Lane Johnson affect the Eagles' run game?
The loss of Lane Johnson. Jeez. I don't know much about Lane Johnson, so I'm going to have to throw that to you.
Pretty good offensive lineman. I'm not as big on the run game as you seem to be, so I'm not really on that anyway. So I do think it'll have a small effect, though.
I mean, you got to attack Washington on the ground. So I guess I'm going to have to look into that situation. And I guess I don't know his PFF ranking offhand, but yeah, I mean, if he's a big part of the offensive line, then yeah, I mean, it's a major thing.
We like Sam Bradford this week. I think he scores a 0 this week, seeing if they're not playing. So let's move on to the next one. Anderson or Booker, and should I dump Tyrell Williams and take both Sanderson and Demaryius Thomas? So he really wants to load up in this Thursday game.
Wow. I mean, if you look at trends, Booker's been getting more and more snaps, more and more touches. So they're starting to incorporate a two-headed backfield, just like in years past. So I feel like for the price, you might be getting a better price on Booker right now.
Yeah, we'll see if people, I don't think people are ready to pull that trigger. So could be a low-owned option. Any other questions, guys? Brad, we got about a minute left. So final thoughts, maybe a bold prediction. Let's do that. You got a bold prediction for the people out here, or any other thoughts you want to hit on here while we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll just go back to that Monday night game. I wish this Monday night game was in prime time, but I'll say Carson Palmer with 4 touchdowns and John Brown, not Floyd, John Brown with 2 of them. So.
I like it. My bold call, Shady McCoy is going to tear Chip Kelly a new one. I think he's going to score 3 touchdowns in this game. So that's my bold call. Anything else we missed? We skipped on. You want to tell the people? We got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I got my opening curling league tonight, so gotta come with a victory here. We start up at in about an hour, so I'm gonna take off here right after the show. First time ever playing skip, so pretty excited.
Jealous, this guy, jealous. I want to play some curling, so maybe I'll have to make a trip in one week. We'll do some curling. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. Appreciate it. Great chat, great questions. So good luck this week. We'll have Chop back with us next week. We discuss week 7, but don't forget, go check out rosters.com. Get in on that Super Bowl promotion that they're running. So good luck this week. We'll see you guys.